Hi, this lesson is on solving quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. So the general equation of a quadratic is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Normally, we would try to factor a trinomial equation or a quadratic equation. Sometimes you can't factor the trinomial equation. So an option is to use the quadratic formula. Now, in order to get the quadratic formula, some mathematicians completed the square on this equation right here, and this is what they got. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So notice the letters from the standard form of a quadratic equation. So the letters here, which are the coefficients? A, which is the leading coefficient, B, which is the middle coefficient, and C, the constant. We plug these values into the quadratic formula and it will tell us what x equals. Keep in mind that you must get the equation equal to 0 before determining A, B, and C. So it must be of this form. Everything needs to be on one side set equal 0. So again, we use the quadratic formula for equations of the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, whether the trinomial form can be factored or not. So you can use this formula whether or not you can factor the quadratic equation or not. You will always get the answer. Let's try an example. First example is x squared minus 8x plus 13 equals 0. The first thing you do is determine what A, B, or C is. Since everything is already on one side, it's easy to determine that. A equals 1 because it is the leading coefficient, is understood to be 1. B is negative 8. Notice that we do use negative. 13 is the constant, so C equals 13. This is our formula again. All you have to do is plug the values of A, B, and C into the formula. And here's what you will get. Notice that the formula has a negative in it, therefore you will have a negative here. But B is also negative, so you will have a negative of a negative 8, which eventually is a positive 8. But for now, we put negative of a negative 8 plus or minus the square root of negative 8 squared, since we are substituting B with negative 8, minus 4 times A, which is 1, times C, which is 13, all over 2. Now we're just going to simplify. Notice that negative of a negative 8 is positive 8, plus or minus square root of negative 8 squared is negative 8 times negative 8, which is 64, minus 4 times 1 times 13. Once you put all of this in the calculator, you should get 12, divided by 2 times 1, which is 2. However, we must simplify this radical here. The square root of 12 has a perfect square factor. Since 12 has a perfect square factor in it, we must simplify this radical by taking out that perfect square factor. Square root of 12 is the same thing as square root of 4 times 3. 4 is the perfect square, so we take the 2 out. So we have x equals 8 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 3 over 2. Notice that we can divide both terms by what's in the denominator, so we have to go a step further. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 2 divided by 2 is 1. A common mistake that students make is they will divide the 8 by 2 and not the 2 by 2, but you have to do both or it's incorrectly simplified. So you have to divide both by that number. You can't divide sideways here, 8 divided by 2, and not divide this by 2, because it's saying everything up here is divided by 2, not just one term. So the solutions are 4 plus the square root of 3 and also 4 minus the square root of 3. So we have two solutions, which is indicated by the degree, D-E-G-R-E-E, which means it's the highest exponent. So the highest exponent is 2, which implies that we will have two solutions. Again, one solution is 4 plus square root of 3, the other is 4 minus the square root of 3. And this little plus minus symbol is a shortcut way of writing the two solutions. Here we go. 2x squared plus 1 equals 4x is our second example. Notice that we do not have it in the ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 form, so we have to get everything on one side. How do you suppose we get everything on one side? Well, we will subtract by 4x. So we subtract 4x from both sides, and now we get it in the ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 form, and we can determine a, b, and c. A here is 2, leading coefficient, b, -4, c, 1. Again, we have the quadratic formula. We plug in the values in for the quadratic formula again. Notice it's negative of a -4, because not only is there a negative in the formula, b is also negative. Alright, -4 squared minus 4 times 2 times 1, all over 2 times 2 this time, because a is 2. Negative of a -4 is +4. And then plus or minus square root of -4 squared, of course, is 16. Then we have 4 times 2 times 1 is 8. So 16 minus 8 is 8. Now, notice that square root of 8 can be simplified, because square root of 8 equals the square root of 4 times 2. Of course, 4 is our perfect square, so the square root of 4 is 2. Since it was a perfect square, we dropped the radical. Now, what we have now is 4 plus or minus 2 square root of 2, since the square root of 8 is 2 square root of 2. Notice here that we can go a step further, because all three of these numbers are divisible by 2. So we get this answer because 2 goes into 4 2 times. 2 goes into 2 1 time is understood. So you don't have to write a 1 here, because it's basically 1 times square root of 2. Divided by 2 divided to 4, which is 2 that goes on in the denominator. So again, you have two answers. One is 2 plus the square root of 2 over 2, and the other answer is 2 minus the square root of 2 over 2. Last example, let's look at x squared plus 8 equals 10x. Again, how can we get everything on the same side? We will subtract 10x from both sides. Alright, we're going to plug in our a, b, and c again. This is just an extra example. Our a is 1 here, b is -10, c is 8. Plug in the values. We will get 10 plus or minus square root of 68. Alright, so that's 100, because -10 squared is 100 minus 32. So you get 68 divided by 2. Now I'm going to show you what this is equivalent to if you had to round it to a decimal. So this problem is to solve the quadratic equation by using the quadratic formula and round answers to the nearest tenth. How do you do that? You just basically put the value in the calculator, and it does it for you. So notice here the answers are split up. One solution is 10 plus the square root of 68 over 2. Other is 10 minus the square root of 68 over 2. Notice that you can simplify this radical, but since with the problem asks to round the answers to the nearest tenth, it's really not necessary to do it because you have to simplify it to a decimal anyway. So you notice you could have simplified the problem and changed the radical to a simplified radical, but why do that when you have to change it to the nearest tenth anyway? So you can put this in your calculator. 10 plus the square root of 68 over 2. Alright, and you'll get 9.12. And then 10 minus square root of 68 over 2 is 0.87. Now if we run into the nearest tenth, that means we want one number after the decimal. So you'll get the answer is 9.1 and the answer is 0.9. Alright, that concludes this session on solving quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. I hope it was helpful.